Hello everyone. I gently send my warmest wishes to you. May your days be filled with good health and lasting peace. Sometimes, love isn't torn apart by distance, but by silence, by pressure that presses quietly on the heart. I chose to step away from CEO Toan because I stopped loving him, but because my mother's words weighed too heavily on my soul. She didn't understand our love, and maybe she never will. So now, I'm Gunandy's left with questions I was too afraid to answer. What should he do? Fight for me, or let me go? I don't know. All I know is, my heart still whispers his name in every quiet moment.
The morning sun had barely touched the roofs when she quietly stepped out, her shadow long and hesitant behind her. In her hands was a small basket half filled with homemade corn cakes. But her heart was heavier than anything she carried. Ly Tu Diem had made a decision that cost her more than she dared to admit. She would stay away from the man who had changed her lifetime. They weren't from the same world. He was a CEO, a man with wealth, a future paved with contracts, concrete, and promises. She was a simple woman with a past too difficult to explain, too painful to ignore. Though their hearts spoke the same language, the world around them did not. The turning point had come when she visited Toan's family to bring them some of the cakes she had made. With trembling hands and a hopeful smile, she offered them what little she could. But what she received in return was not kindness, it was a firm, cold rejection from his mother. "Someone like you," the older woman had said, "does not belong in my son's future. You should understand your place. He needs someone who matches his status, his name, not someone like you, no education, a past marriage, no family name of worth." Ly Tu Diem had stood there silently, absorbing every word like a blade through the chest. She didn't argue, she didn't beg, she only bowed her head, thanked the woman, and quietly left. From that day on, she avoided Toan. She didn't return his calls. She didn't answer his messages. She stayed hidden, working hard to survive, her heart aching with every breath. Toan, confused and worried, visited the places she used to go, even bought her books on baking, hoping she'd feel encouraged. But she was nowhere to be found. Toan sat alone one night, staring at his phone, replaying the last conversation they had. There was no fight, no anger, just sudden silence, and it was killing him. He knew something had happened, but what could he do now? Should he confront his mother, risking a rift in the family? Should he give up the search, trusting fate to bring her back? Or should he fight, not just for love, but for the right of every person, no matter their background, to be loved and respected? His decision came with the sunrise. Toan stood up, picked up the rap book still lying on the table, and whispered to himself, "Love doesn't need permission, and she deserves to know that she is enough exactly as she is." Toan didn't wait another moment. He knew where she might be, perhaps not exactly, but his heart guided him. He took the books, got in his car, and drove toward the small market where she had once sold her homemade cakes. He remembered the way her face lit up when she spoke about baking, how proud she was of every small success. He had to find her not as a CEO, not as someone trying to rescue her, but as a man who loved her truly. When he reached the marketplace, it was late morning. The sun was high, and the stalls were buzzing with activity. He walked slowly, scanning every face, every corner. His heart raced with both hope and fear. What if she truly wanted to disappear from his life? What if he was too late? Then, just as he was about to turn away, He saw her sitting behind a modest table, a few remaining cakes in front of her, her hair tied back, face tired but still glowing in a way only he could see. He stepped forward. "Diem," he called softly. She looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, the world fell silent. Her hands trembled slightly, unsure whether to hide or run to him. "I brought you these," he said, holding out the books. "I thought you might like them." She didn't reach for them. Instead, her eyes welled with tears. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Your mother, she doesn't want me in your life." "I know," Toan replied, his voice steady. "But this is my life, and only I can decide who belongs in it. But I'm not like the women she wants for you," she said. "I have nothing. You have everything I've ever needed," he said, gently placing the books on her table. "You saved me when I was broken. You took care of me when you didn't have to. That's worth more than any title or background." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I was scared. I didn't want to ruin your future. You are my future, Diem, with or without anyone's approval." A small crowd had gathered around, watching the exchange, but neither of them noticed. In that moment, there were only the two of them, the souls who had already chosen each other, even when the world had not. He reached out and held her hand. "I'm not asking you to fight my family. I'll do that," he said. "I'm just asking you to trust me. Let me protect what we have. Let me protect you." She nodded slowly, overwhelmed by his words, her heart finally softening after all the pain. "I've never wanted anything more," she whispered. Toan gently squeezed her hand, and for the first time in weeks, Lighta Diem felt warmth return to her chest. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in this fight. Later that afternoon, they sat side by side at a quiet tea stall near the edge of the village. The books lay between them, symbols of hope, of belief, of a second chance. Diem still felt uncertain, but Toan's presence gave her strength. "I'm scared," she admitted, stirring her tea slowly. "What if your mother never accepts me?" Toan looked at her, eyes unwavering. "Then I'll still choose you." She looked up, surprised by the conviction in his voice. "I love my mother," he said, "but that doesn't mean I let her decide who I get to love. I know her heart. She just wants me to be happy. She doesn't realize yet that you are my happiness." Diem said nothing, her throat tightening with emotion. She had spent so long thinking she wasn't enough, that her past, her poverty, her brokenness would forever keep her apart from the life and love she secretly dreamed of. But now, Toan was breaking through every wall she had built. "We'll go see her," he said gently. "Together. You don't need to prove anything. Just be yourself, and I'll speak for us both." That evening, they arrived at Toan's family home. The sun was setting, casting soft golden light across the tiled courtyard. Diem hesitated before walking in, her hands nervously gripping the hem of her blouse. Toan placed a hand on her back and guided her forward. His mother was sitting in the living room, sipping tea. When she saw Diem, her expression tightened. But before she could say anything, Toan spoke calmly but firmly. "Mother," he began, "I've always respected your wishes. I've followed your plans. But this time, I ask you to respect mine." His mother stayed silent, eyes flickering between the two. "I love Diem. She saved me when I was lost, and she's taught me more about strength, kindness, and resilience than anyone else ever has. She's not like us," his mother said coldly. "She doesn't belong to our world." "I don't want someone from our world," Toan replied. "I want someone who knows how to love with all her heart, even when the world is cruel. I want someone real, Tu Diem took a deep breath, then spoke softly. I don't want to cause any conflict. I never asked for this. I was ready to walk away, but I care about Toan, and I respect you, even if you can't accept me yet. There was silence. Then Toan's mother sighed and placed her teacup down. I still don't know if you're the right one for him, but I see the way he looks at you, and I can't fight his happiness. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. It was a beginning. Toan smiled, reached for Diem's hand again, and whispered, "We'll be okay." And this time, she believed him. Love, when true and genuine, is not bound by social status, wealth, or the expectations of others. The story of Ly Tu Diem and CEO Toan teaches us that the heart does not measure worth by titles or background, but by kindness, loyalty, and courage. Ly Tu Diem had every reason to walk away. She had been judged, misunderstood, and rejected not because of who she was, but because of what she lacked in the eyes of others. Yet, she remained dignified, respectful, and true to her heart. She didn't beg for approval, nor did she try to become someone she was not. Her quiet strength was her greatest value. Toan, on the other hand, showed what it truly means to stand for someone you love. Instead of giving in to pressure from his family, he listened to his heart. He saw past the surface and recognized the woman who had been by his side during his darkest moments. He didn't allow tradition or societal pressure to define his happiness. He chose love, and with that, he chose bravery. This story reminds us that love is not always easy. It often comes with resistance, fear, and obstacles. But the love that is worth fighting for is the kind that pushes us to grow, to challenge norms, and to speak our truth. When we find someone who sees our worth, who believes in us even when we don't believe in ourselves, that is the kind of love we must hold on to. In the end, the lesson is simple. Stand by those who stand by you. Love with courage, not fear. And never let the world tell you who you are worthy of loving or being loved by.